And I had a little girl come up to me the other night, and I think she'd represent a number of young people who've been coming to the chapel for many years. And she said to me, "You know, Ted, I pity you now." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, there are two Ted Noffses." She said, "There's the Ted Noffs that has to live up to his caricature. The Ted Noffs that's always living up to the public image that has been created about him. But," she said, "that isn't the Ted Noffs that I particularly like." And she said, I'm still hopeful that the real Ted Noffs, the Ted Noffs that was here at the chapel when we began to come, the Ted Noffs that can talk personally as we're talking now, it will not be lost." And she said, "That's what matters most of all." Well, there are those times in this work where one becomes so oppressed by dealing all the time with problems, that I'll try to get home and just be alone with the family to perhaps watch some television. I'm not able, of course, ever to get to the football on a Saturday afternoon, because Saturday afternoon is a terribly busy time, and I love football. So I try to spend a Monday night watching the television replays, and I sit with the boys and we go over the whole of the game. But as sure as I sit down, then the phone begins, and there may be, during the course of the match, a dozen calls from people whose problems are urgent and critical. I see my quarrel with the church as a lover's quarrel. In other words, I dare to quarrel with the church because I love it. After all, if you love a thing, you don't just accept that thing complacently. Otherwise, there can't be any love there at all. But if you're deeply concerned about a thing, well, then you must question and challenge and probe. The other thing is, of course, that Margaret, my wife, from the very beginning of my ministry, has helped to give purpose and direction to everything. It's so easy to be caught up in public life that one loses one's way. Margaret has been able, all through my ministry, to share with me what she believes to be the central issues, and her love and my love for her, I think, is at the very heart of King's Cross. Everything seems to be going along all right so far, but I'm just a bit concerned about the question of your parents. Are they on side with you on this matter?
Well, they sort of think we've got a problem with we don't.
Yes.
They're sort of worried, sort of concerned.
Yes. They seen the baby. The baby's name is, what is the baby's name, Nancy? Emma. Have they seen the baby?
Yes.
And what have they said you should do?
My parents are happy about the baby. You know, they think we should get married as soon as possible, or any time if possible. You know, Peter's parents don't feel so much this way. I think they don't sort of recognise the fact that the baby exists. I think. But
don't you think, as young people, perhaps you have some responsibility to perhaps take a little bit of notice of your parents in this matter?
Well, look, I think our prime responsibility is to ourselves and to the child.
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody.
Keith Mackey represents the opposite viewpoint, that you don't achieve anything with these kinds of protests, that we have to find new ways of protesting, and we have to find new ways using established legal and political procedures. And the human rights movement is the vehicle by which all of these young people can express the way they feel.
The world is at your command. He's as blind as he can be, just sees what he wants to see. Nowhere, man, can you see me at all. Nowhere, man, don't worry, take your time, don't hurry, leave it all till somebody else lends you a hand.
How do you do it? I work from the White Democracy Work Committee at the Wayside Chapel at King's Cross. If you're interested, it's a new political idea, we'd like to encourage people to meet their local member and discuss their problems with him, say once a fortnight or once a month, and see if they can come to some agreement and encourage the member to do more for the people, to be active. We feel that they're in there doing nothing at the moment, and they could do a bit more.
Well, what is the wayside chapel? I've got a bit of an idea, but the fundamental...
Well, it's got a lot of different aspects as far as the social work is doing, but our part of it is in the political sphere. This is a movement within the Wayside Chapel, but the Wayside Chapel is a catalyst for getting these sort of movements off the ground. It doesn't have a doctrine of its own. It's basically to encourage people to participate in activities, the same as we're trying to encourage you to participate in government. We're from the Wayside Chapel Make Democracy Work Committee. We'd like to discuss some of you the local current issues and encourage you to attend a meeting we're holding in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, no, I wouldn't be interested. Thank you.
Would you take this?
Would you like some information?
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, then.
The trouble is that most of the people's lives are sort of meaningless. They don't have any depth of feeling in any religious sense or even in the emotional sense. It's not the fact of the particular places they go to or the activities they do, such as pulling poker machines or drinking in clubs and all that sort of stuff, going to Anzac Day. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But for most of them, it's just such a lot of humbug, and they don't take any notice of what they're saying or doing anyway. It's just a sort of action in which their mind and their heart don't participate. It's only a social fulfilment. I think one of the things that causes a lot of tension is an essential side of life. Most of the pleasures aren't properly fulfilled, as people seem to be able to stuff their faces with stuff that they don't enjoy, and then when they're having any other love, as they call it, they don't seem to be able to do that properly either. They're ashamed to be in any way sensual because they've always been brought up by the church to think that's dirty, and yet they still want it subconsciously or consciously, but they're too scared to explore any other avenues because their mates will sneer at them, or if they're women, they'll be called degenerate or low for wanting any sort of fulfilment of the pleasure, and yet the physical and sexual senses are only just another type of sense, the same as a meal, and yet no one frowns on someone for wanting to eat nice food. Young people today are tending to be more individualistic and consequently sort of preaching the doctrine of being responsible for their own actions personally and socially as well. I take into account the world around me, but I think of it for myself, and so the chapel has enabled me to not to find that out, but to make it a reality, and I think this is what Ted's after with everyone up there. He doesn't know the full consequence of what he's doing, really, but I think that's it. You know, he glosses over it, saying that he's giving people somewhere, a place to go, but it means more than that. It means somewhere to develop themselves, somewhere where they're not bound down by having to do what other people want. They're free to indulge in whatever they like. Well, unfortunately, most of them do nothing. This isn't Ted's fault, though. He's giving them the chance, and they either take it or leave it.
Making all this nowhere plans for nobody. Making all this nowhere plans for nobody.
Well, Kay Edwards came to us as a conventional deaconess. You know, everybody knows Miss Kay in Woolloomooloo as Miss Kay. Everybody trusts the caravan. And these people would be traditionally Catholic and other religions. But there's no question of religion that comes in. The question is one of humanity, and this is a humanitarian work, and it's trusted in this way.
Could you tell him that people might listen it up?
I don't think he's messing it up. It's just that he doesn't know what to do.
Right. Now stay well back, though. because you're not in sight yet, Charlie.
Wish I could see Jesus, but I'm too small. I think I'll climb up this tree. Come down, Zacchaeus. Let's go and have tea at your place. Oh,
I'll be thanking you. Thank you for every tree and flower. Thank you for everything you give me. Thank you for everything you share. I'll be
I grew up on a wheat and sheep property about 14 miles north of Parkes. Went to school there. Began studying music after I left school and taught music for a few years after that, prior to coming into the Deaconess Order. I think it was 1963 when I entered the Deaconess College at Leichhardt for 2 years and trained to be a deaconess. And it was during that last term of college that I was taken out to the King's Cross experiment, this very new experiment called the Wayside Chapel, and there I began working in a part-time capacity while still in college. We at the chapel have had to face criticism constantly. This is something we've had to live with, really, but we found it to be a strengthening thing because we've had to really look at our beliefs and all the things that we've clung to over the years and see whether they are really worth holding on to. And I believe that after all this is the ultimate thing because Christ, I'm sure, had to face up to the same sort of criticism. When I first came to the Wayside Chapel, I was immensely excited to see that here, at last, the church was breaking into the world. And here also, we could form programs according to people's needs rather than trying to put people into little boxes as so often we had attempted to do in the church.